then at the end of the shir, I'd message Rav Ebner saying, thank you very much for the shir. You weren't just speaking into the ether. I gained a lot. And Rav Ebner would always reply saying with either the makorot, either an extra something to it which he thought he missed out, but he wanted to also add. And for Rav Ebner, there's always an opportunity to learn more and to learn deeper and to learn more thoroughly. Another quick anecdote is that when I was in university, when Rav Berman invited me to speak, I looked through a lot of my previous emails and correspondence with Rav Ebner. One of my questions to Rav Ebner in university was, I had a Christian evangelical friend who gave me a New Testament as a present for my birthday. I asked Rav Ebner, can I keep it? He said, the short answer was yes, I can keep it. I might want to put it on, there's no question of Geniza. I might want to put it somewhere in recycling or something like that. But if it piques my fancy, I can keep it. There's no problem with it. But just so that this present does result in Torah being given and Torah being learnt, I attach my recording on Parashat Chayesar, which I've just done. There's always an opportunity to learn more and to learn deeper. I want to thank, number one, Rav Berman, all the faculty that are here that I learned with. Rav Ebner obviously had a huge impact on me wherever I've gone. I wrote 4 pages down and I was given the good advice, keep it short and keep it sweet. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone else. But a huge hakarat tov to Rav Ebner, to Mrs. Ebner, and to the faculty. And may his memory be a blessing for all of us and continue to inspire us.
Amen.
I feel embarrassed that I'm speaking from my phone. In my head, I should have like an awkwardly. How do I come? I feel like I should have like an awkwardly photocopied piece of paper, but okay. I'll introduce myself. Also, my name is Noam Steinman. I was in the yeshiva in 2010, which I believe was year 7. I'm going to give a little bit of background on myself because it's a little bit important to what I want to say. So I come from a place called Ottawa in Canada. It's like a little town, and I don't know, there wasn't so much real Jewish upbringing in this place. There was some, but I had made this decision against my parents' will to go to Israel to yeshiva. My parents have since accepted it, thank God. But I'm from such a weird place that the yeshiva couldn't come interview me in this Ottawa, and I had to travel to Montreal, which is like a 2-hour drive, to meet Rabbi Tabori in the school. I probably don't even remember. It's fine. And I was all nervous, right? Because I'm like this kid from this weird place, and not really sure what like we had a rabbi in our shul, but like that was like I didn't know what a yeshiva was or like how to talk to a rabbi from a yeshiva. I remember people telling me like, no, you're like, we didn't call it then, but I was like the DEI guy. Right? I was like, oh, like we can dilute our American population by getting the guy from Ottawa. So like, I was like guaranteed entry, okay? Which I still believe is the reason why you let me in, but that's fine. Why am I telling you all this? It's because I arrive in the yeshiva, and like I've been to Israel a few times, and I come from a very Zionist family. You're getting a phone call, Rabbi, on your phone and on your watch. It's okay. Sorry. The audio's working. The audio's working now? Great. Oh, it's working? Yeah. Fantastic. I'm the first person people are hearing. Okay. Anyway. So I show up in this yeshiva and in the Yossi Ben Yoezer building, and I'm like, basically like a lost puppy. Like I don't really know where I am. I'm like, what I'm supposed to do. And the first thing you do, I assume still, is you meet with like the rabbi they think is like roughly your knowledge level that they can test you to put you in a shir. And so they put me in Rabbi Ebner's. Rabbi Ebner interviewed me for what shir I should be in. Big hakarat hatov to my high school rabbi, Rabbi Howard Finkelstein, back in Ottawa, who his son is a year older than me. So after his son went to YU, I became his student chavruta that I had to learn with every day, and so he taught me how to learn, which is a lot of HaVa'ad Tov. And so Rabbi Ebner, who in those years I assume for a long time taught the kids from Ottawa who didn't know much, so he ended up asking, like, why do you know how to read? And we were talking, and he shared for me, I think then, if not a little bit later, that he originally was from a place called Calgary, Alberta in Canada. And for me, I'm telling you, my first day, that was like an anchor. Like, oh, here are all these rabbis in Israel who, like, I presume were all American originally, or I don't know if there were any British rabbis at the time, but for me, that was like an anchor. Like, oh, this seemingly elderly man, who I guess wasn't that old, but as an 18-year-old felt very old, and he had this not really, he had white hair, and he was like a rabbi, and he's like, oh, he's like a kid from Calgary, and I was a kid from Ottawa, which is like almost the same thing. For probably nobody in this room understands what I'm talking about, but that's okay. And for me, that was like an anchor, and I thought about that at his levaya when. And also in a similar way here, where there were people from seemingly every generation and every age were at that levaya in basically equal proportion. That there were people who had known Rabbi Ebner for decades and people who had known Rabbi Ebner for not as long and had known him at different stages of life. And my father, thank God, was I mean, he also came with me to the funeral, and he remarked afterwards, and it was very true, that everybody walked out of that funeral with the same face. We were all remembering the things that Rabbi Ebner had taught us, and we were all thinking about, I imagine that I'm probably the only person he ever told he was from Calgary as a reason to make me feel comfortable. But for everybody who was at that funeral, and everybody who knew him had like some connection to him, beyond just a rabbi who knew how to teach Torah, which, I mean, he was very good at, but he was very good, and he was very intentional, it seemed like, to give us that sort of personal connection to which we could anchor our relationship to him and therefore to Torah. So I wanted to mention that. I want to tell like one more sort of long story, and then I'll wrap up. I don't have my timer. So Rabbi Ebner was as Rabbi Susman mentioned, I knew that he was a great rabbi when my children were born, and so Rabbi Ebner we gave him the kavod at both of our sons' brises to announce the name, say that paragraph where in the middle the reason why everyone comes to the bris, to hear the name. And so when my first son was born, we named him Moshe Eliezer. And when Rabbi Ebner, I want to thank Michael Rainsbury, who's here, for somehow having a video of this. But until he sent this video to me a few weeks ago, I had this engraved in my brain that so if you've never been to a bris, what happens is the rabbi reads the paragraph and then pauses, and then the dad whispers the name, and then the rabbi reads it out loud. Okay? So when I whispered Moshe Eliezer to Rabbi Ebner, he paused, he choked up, he wept a little bit, and then he sort of choked out the name in a very, he seemed very, very emotional. And the video evidence proves that it's not just in my mind. And so why was he emotional? To my understanding, is that my grandfather Moshe, for which I named my son, was a Holocaust survivor, and my mother donates a day of learning in the yeshiva every year for Lidun Nishmato on his yortzeit. And for many years, Rabbi Ebner would always, after Shacharit that day, would sort of speak for a few minutes about my grandfather, and that was very. And then Mrs. Ebner would send it to the whole family, and we would all listen to this audio, and it was very, very nice. And so I'm sitting there at my son's bris. For me, it's emotional. It's my first kid. It's his bris, and I'm naming him after this grandfather of mine, and that's, for me, very emotional. And I see Rabbi Ebner is also very emotional. So at the Shiva, I was actually speaking to Rabbi Ebner's son, Noam. his other son is named Moshe. And my name is Noam, if you didn't remember. And it's fine. And so I was speaking to his son Noam, and I shared this story with him. And he said, I want to tell you something. I said, what is that? He says, Rabbi Ebner's father's name was Eliezer, and his grandfather's name was Moshe. And you named your son Moshe Eliezer. And then apparently Rabbi Ebner is the only one in the chain whose name isn't Moshe or Eliezer. It's like Moshe, Eliezer, Rabbi Ebner, and then Moshe, and then Eliezer. Like it keeps going. And he shared a story about Rabbi Ebner's grandfather Moshe, and why Rabbi Ebner named his son Moshe, as I had done. And Noam Ebner said to me, he said, I guarantee for you that at your bris, when you named your son, he was emotional, also for you, but also he was thinking about his family, and he was thinking about his grandfather Moshe, and he was thinking about his father Eliezer, and his son Moshe, and his grandson Eliezer. And that's a big reason why he was emotional. And then Noam Ebner says to me, and I'll tell you why he never told you that story. Because Rabbi Ebner wanted you to feel that he was focusing only on you at your son's bris. And he would never want to take his, what was meaningful to him and cloud what he was doing for you. I share that story to sort of point out that Rabbi Ebner was focusing on both these stories. He was focusing on what I needed, and I imagine what many of us here needed, or wanted to hear as students, and that he never made it about himself, and then he always focused on what was important and what was needed for us. Rabbi Benny, one more thing. I wrote down, I'm telling you, not 4 pages. I wrote down 3 things, but like each of them is long. So, I can't help but remember a small teaching we learned from Rabbi Ebner, which I want to share, which is when I was in the yeshiva was when the awful pigua when the Fogel family was killed. And Rabbi Ebner and the yeshiva took us to the Levaya. And I remember, is it before or afterwards, Rabbi Ebner gave the sikha where he taught us that when we say the paragraph in Shmona Esrei, V'ishei Yisrael utfilatam tekabel beratzon, what are the Ishei Yisrael? What are the sacrifices of the Jewish people which we hope that God accepts beratzon? And he said these are the for 2,000 years we didn't have korbanot, but we had Ishei Yisrael, that we had people who we sacrificed. And so it would be the past 2 years, which are Be'ezrat Hashem ending tonight. This is a teaching that has come up for me over and over and over again over the past 2 years, unfortunately. And I just want to thank. I think it's an example. I want to thank Rabbi Susman, who also my Rosh HaYeshiva, and the faculty here, half of whom now are like my friends and neighbors in Modi'in, but not the faculty who were here and who taught me ostensibly for 10 months, but never stopped teaching me, and B'ezrat Hashem will never stop teaching me. So thank you very much.
Two Chatayim. The sound is working. Thank you. It's a good thing we hired new faculty because Rabbi Raymond helped us get it going. And I made one mistake. I sent an email to the wrong email address. So we're going to have another speaker very briefly, Ilan Regenbaum, who I believe wanted to speak, and I sent to the wrong email address. So he's going to speak really briefly, and then we'll get to the main speaker.
Thank you. I will be very, very fast. I will try not to cry. I had the zchut of learning with Rabbi Ebner every week for many, many years. I'm regretting speaking. The one thing I do want to say is my first day in yeshiva, Rabbi Ebner got up and snapped. That was 15 years ago. Apologies, this was meant to be fast. And that feels like yesterday. Just as Rabbi Ebner got sick, I wanted to buy him a gift to bring to one of our chavrutas, just to show him I'm thinking of him. And so I'm looking for. We learn Sfas MS every week, and I tried to find some Hasidus poetry. I just thought it would be an interesting mix of our worlds. I couldn't find too many English Hasidic poetry anywhere. But I did come across a recent translation of poetry by Rav Shlomo Ibn Gvirol, and I thought it was Kabbalistic. It worked, and so I was going to give it to him, but he passed away before I could embody what Rav Ebner. One of the many things I read what I wrote in the packet of the book. I'd like to give it to the yeshiva. Hopefully there's room on the bookshelf. But time flies and appreciate every second. So thank you.
The students in the yeshiva already heard my relationship with Rabbi Ebner, which at this point in time I think is 39 years long. From that time I heard that first El Shir. But I want to introduce, I know we those in the yeshiva know that Rabbi Ebner had a minhag that he would always say that an introduction should be reversely proportionate to the importance of the person. And while that might be true, sometimes the people in the audience don't always know the person. So I had the privilege of, it's odd to introduce one of the people who's had one of the greatest impacts on my life, besides Rabbi Ebner and so many other people. Rabbi Menachem Schrader was a Ram in Yeshivat HaMiftar for many years with Rabbi Ebner. He was responsible for creating JLIC, of which those guys in Yeshiva know that I was a participant in for a number of years as a rabbi at Brandeis. Talmid Chacham par excellence, and I have to say, again, I'll make it brief. Any Gemara that I ever teach is all indebted to Rabbi Schrader. And if I go on further, it will be unfair. So I want to introduce, we're going to hand out Makrot sheets. If you haven't got them, did you get them yet? We'll distribute the Makrot sheets right now. And Rabbi Schrader will give a shir on kavana in Hilchot Sukkah.
I want to thank Rav Susman for this opportunity, and Rav Berman and whoever else might have been involved in the decision to allow me to give the shir on this occasion. I see many faces. We'll keep to the topic. The topic is kavana in the Mitzvah of Sukkah. And I'm going to try to explain the problem in this matter. Let's read the opening source, which are the psukim in Chumash Vayikra. Basukot teshvu shivat yamim, kol hezrach v'Yisrael yeshvu basukot. L'man yedu dorotechem ki basukot hoshafti et bnei Yisrael v'hotzii otam me'eretz Mitzrayim ani Hashem Elokechem. it's not necessary for this group to translate. I'm going to do that anyways out of the bad habit I have of when I give shiurim in English. I always do that. So I'm going to do it now also. You shall sit in Sukkot for 7 days. All citizens of Israel shall sit in Sukkot, meaning on Sukkot, in order that your generations will know that I had the Jewish people sitting in Sukkot, the Bnei Yisrael sitting in Sukkot, when I took them out of the land of Egypt. I am Hashem, your God. There are 613 mitzvot in the Torah. 248 of them are positive commandments. Many of those positive commandments are ben adam l'chaveiro and are understood without need to explain them. I don't recall any mitzvot aseh that are chukim, except in the sense of that para aduma is a chok. But by and large, positive commandments are understood. And the Mitzvah of Sukkot is understood as well, in case we weren't sure. The Torah explains it to us, in order that your generations know that you sat in Sukkot coming out of Mitzrayim. There is a machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer in different midrashim. The two opinions are attributed to one or the other, not always to the same person. Whether the Sukkot are literally Sukkot, huts, more or less what we make and sit in, or whether the Sukkot are ananei hakavod, Hashem's protection of the Jewish people in the most explicit way. Even if the Sukkot are huts, they're also a protection from the scorching sun of Egypt and the desert and from whatever else. But certainly the notion of ananei kavod is a much grander notion of protection. Question: to what extent is the understanding of the reason for the mitzvah of Sukkot necessary in order to fulfill the mitzvah? Is that question clear? In other words, let's say a person just sits in the sukkah and has no idea whatsoever that the reason for sitting in the sukkah is ki basukot hoshafti et bnei Yisrael b'otzi otam me'eretz Mitzrayim. Is the mitzvah fulfilled or not? Now, let's just clarify that there is something which is coming to many of your heads right now, which is not the topic. And that is the question of mitzvot srichot kavana or mitzvot einan srichot kavana. Do mitzvot require intention to fulfill the mitzvah? Or do you fulfill a mitzvah by performing it even without intending to fulfill the mitzvah? You would say, well, the question I raised should depend on that, right? Everyone holding with me still? Some people. That is not what we're talking about. The question of whether mitzvot srichot kavana is a question of when you are performing a mitzvah. Is it required to have intention to be yotzei the mitzvah when you're performing the mitzvah? Or no, if you perform the mitzvah, even if you have no intention to be yotzei the mitzvah, the simple fact that you performed it, you're yotzei. That is the question of whether mitzvot srichot kavana or mitzvot einan srichot kavana. simple example, which may be a poor example because it's a question of eating, which is more complicated. But someone gets invited to a Seder, and at the Seder, they eat matzah. And no one explains to them, a Jewish person, that eating matzah the night of the Seder is a mitzvah. But it is. If a person knows it's a mitzvah, then there's certainly yotzei the mitzvah. What if the person is not aware that eating matzah on the night of the Seder is a mitzvah? But they did. Did they fulfill the mitzvah or did they not? That question should be dependent on whether mitzvot tzrichot kavana or mitzvot einan tzrichot kavana. But you may remember that the Haggadah itself talks about a different kavana for matzah, right? Matzah zu shanu ochlim al shumma. And the answer is because with Bnei Yisrael, when they came out of Mitzrayim, they had to go out so quickly that their bread couldn't rise, and they ended up eating matzah. Now, without going into too many details on that point, that is why it is a mitzvah. There too, one can ask, well, if you're told eat matzah, why? It's a mitzvah. Oh, okay. Then you have kavana to be yotzei the mitzvah, but if you don't know what the mitzvah is all about, is the reasoning behind the mitzvah also a requisite in order to fulfill the mitzvah or not? Which is a very important question, which is worthy of a Shabbos Hagadol drasha, but it's not Shabbos Hagadol. So we're not going to talk about that, even though it's actually a very related question to what we're about to talk about for real. In other words, in this case, the Torah tells us why we're supposed to perform the mitzvah of Sukkot. And the reason is, L'man yedu dorotechem, ki basukot hoshavti et bnei Yisrael b'otzi otam me'eretz Mitzrayim. What if you go into the sukkah and you eat and you fulfill it and you're there for 7 days and you sleep there and you don't leave the sukkah for 7 days, but you don't know. Did you fulfill the mitzvah or didn't you fulfill the mitzvah? Question clear. And this is not the question of mitzvot tzrichot kavana, as I explained a moment ago. Okay. Now, we're going to see that the Gadol Hadoros that dealt with this question first and foremost explicitly was the Bach. The Bach is a perush on the Tur Shulchan Aruch. What brought the Bach to talk about it is the following line in the Tur. Please look at Bet on the pages that were handed out. V'asukot she'omer hakotuv she'oshivu behem heim ananei kvodo shehekifanu behem v'val yakeh otanu shrav v'shemesh. The Tur tells us that the Sukkot that we're supposed to remember, or the Sukkot that it doesn't, I gave away the punchline, right? The Sukkot that God protected us in when we exited Mitzrayim were the Ananei Kavod. That's what protected us from sun and dryness. Now, this is highly uncharacteristic of the Tur to start getting into Ta'amei HaMitzvot. The Tur is basically the backdrop of the Shulchan Aruch itself. The Shulchan Aruch was meant to be a kitzur of the Tur and the Beit Yosef. And the Tur was, practically speaking, the first Shulchan Aruch, right? Torah didn't talk about things that were not practical, only things that were practical. That's how he distinguished himself from the Rambam. And one would expect all the details of Hilchot Sukkot in Hilchot Sukkot of the Torah, but not an explanation. Were they Ananei HaKavod? Were they real Sukkot? Why is he talking about that? Question clear? Good. Now we're going to read the Bach, which is Ot Gimel on this page. Bach Tibur HaMatchil B'Sukkot, there. B'Sukkot Teshvu V'Gomer, Tala Katuv V'Gomer. It is striking that the word Tala Katuv seems to appear in the Bach, but not in the Torah itself. It seems to be quoting it, but we're going to ignore that and we continue. The Bach. Ika L'Meidat V'Divrei Rabbeinu. One can be medayek in the words of Rabbeinu, meaning the Torah. She'ein ze midarko b'chiburo ze levaer hakavana l'shum mikra shebat Torah. It's not his way to explain anything. Reasons. Ki lo ba rak lifsok hora'ah. The Torah only comes to tell us what to do. O lahorot minhag, or to teach us minhagim. Upo he'erich levaer v'lidrosh hamikra de B'Sukkot Teshvu. Question of the Bach. Question clear? It's a question we asked a moment ago. Right? Good. Now we're going to get the Bach's answer. V'yireh li lomar bazeh shesover, the Torah thinks, dechevan dichtiv v'man yedu dorotechem v'chulon, in order that your generations know, Lo kiyem ha-mitzvah ketikuna im lo yeda kavana mitzvah sukkah kefi pashta. One does not fulfill the mitzvah properly. Get that word, because it's going to be an issue as we continue. Lo kiyem ha-mitzvah ketikuna, one does not fulfill the mitzvah properly if he does not know the intention of the mitzvah of Sukkah, simply understood. Now, it could be some of you have learned Masechet Sukkah or have started learning Masechet Sukkah. And on the first daf of the Masechet, the pasuk, L'man yedu dorotechem ki b'Sukkot hoshafti b'nei Yisrael b'otzi otam mi'eretz Mitzrayim, is used and understood for all sorts of drashot. And it doesn't mention the simple meaning of the pasuk. You know why it doesn't mention it? Because we don't need the Gemara to teach us the simple meaning of the pasuk. We know what the simple meaning of the pasuk is. And the Bach is, you'll excuse the term, being mechadesh, that the simple meaning of the pasuk is necessary for the proper fulfillment of the mitzvah, regardless of all the drashos and daf bet in Masechet Sukkah. Again, shesover dekevan dichtiv l'man yedu lo kiyem ha-mitzvah ketikuna im lo yeda kavanat mitzvah sukkah kefi pashta. V'lachein, therefore, bi'er lefi hapshat di'ikar ha-kavana b'yeshivat sukkah sheyizkar yitziat Mitzrayim. Now, the phrase sheyizkar yitziat Mitzrayim has caused the Mefarshim on the back a lot of difficulty. But I'm going to explain it as I think he clearly means. You should remember what happened during Yitziat Mitzrayim, that Hashem protected us with the Ananei HaKavod. That's why the Torah feels it's necessary to state that we were protected through the Ananei HaKavod from all sorts of dangers. The sun, rain, whatever else we might have been protected from. And that is the notion of man yedu dorotechem. If you don't know this, you don't properly fulfill the mitzvah of Sukkah. How about that? Notice the word at the end of the first line here. Im lo yeda kavanat mitzvah sukkah kefi pshata. The intention of the mitzvah. If you don't know what the mitzvah is all about, you're not yotze the mitzvah kitikuna. Now let's keep reading the Bach. V'zeh hatam ba'atzmo l'Rabbeinu Zal. Oh, excuse me. We're going further. What's his point? The question of whether the Sukkot were ananei hakavod or huts is not an interesting historical question, according to the Bach's understanding of the Torah. It is a halacha l'maisa question. What are you supposed to remember? What are you supposed to be knowing when you're sitting in the sukkah? Are you supposed to be knowing that Hashem protected us in huts, in Sukkot? Or are you supposed to be knowing that Hashem protected us with ananei hakavod? Because one or the other is the proper interpretation of the man yedu dorotechem ki basukot of shafti b'nei Yisrael. What are you supposed to be thinking about? What are you supposed to be aware of? What is that yedi'ah that you're supposed to be having? Which one? One or the other. To perform the mitzvah, to have that yedi'ah, requires knowing the answer to the Torah's question. And the Torah gives us halacha l'maisa, his answer. Psak of the Torah. What are Sukkot? Ananei hakavod. Clear? That's why the Bach says, the Torah explains that we lived in ananei hakavod, because that is supposed to be what we're supposed to be remembering. Okay. Now the Bach moves on. I know I spoke enough already, and that what I just said will require a lot of thought for many of you, maybe all of you, for the next 18 or so hours that we're still living in the sukkah. But the Bach doesn't stop here. He continues. V'zeh hatam ba'atzmo l'Rabbeinu Zal, meaning the Torah b'ma shekatav b'ilchot tzitzit b'siman chet. Quote from the Torah there. V'yichavein b'tatvo shetzivanu hamakom man tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai. Tzitzit is supposed to remind us of all the mitzvot. And notice the word laman, yedu. Tedu. If the tzitzit don't remind us of all the mitzvot, did we fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzit? Yes or no? Well, the Bach is saying, you're not yotze ketikuna. You're not fulfilling it properly. If the tzitzit is not reminding you to keep all the mitzvot. V'chein. I'm reading the fourth line now. Bilchot tefillin siman kafei. The Torah quotes these things, right? V'yichavein. Again, another quote from the Torah. V'yichavein ba'anachatam shetzivanu hamakom l'haniach. L'man tiyeh Torat Hashem b'ficha. Another pasuk. Tefillin is supposed to remind us that Torat Hashem should be in our mouths. If it doesn't do the job, then the laman of the Torah is not being fulfilled. And the mitzvah is not being fulfilled properly if the laman does not come about. Sukkah, tzitzit, tefillin, each one with their own verse laman. Each one, if you don't get that laman into your heads, you have not fulfilled the mitzvah kitikuna. That's the lashon of the Bach. Continues the Bach, Mashalo asakein b'shar halachot. Ki lo katav sheyichavein shum kavana ba'asiyat hamitzvah. מפני כי המקיים המצווה כדינה יוצא בה אף על פי שלא הייתה לו שום כוונה. In all other mitzvot, if you don't have the kavana, even if the kavana is a particular kavana of the mitzvah, you're yotze. You did it. You're yotze. You fulfill it. אבל בציצית, שכתוב בהם למען תזכרו, וכן בתפילין כתוב למען תהיה תורת השם בפיך. And in Sukkah, of course, where it says, למען ידעו דורותיכם, שפשוטו הוא שהתפילים הם אות וזיכרון כדי שיהיה תורת השם שגור בפינו. כי ביד חזקה הוציאך, יראה שלא קיים המצווה כתיקונה, אם לא יכוון אותה הכוונה. ולכן כתב בהלכות אלו ויכוון. Does this sound like an important bach? Now I will just add one point. It could be my own lacking. I am unaware of any of the Mefarshim that dared disagree with this Bach. Couldn't find it. No. We hold these mitzvahs, even though it says a man, it's like everything else. Couldn't find anyone who said that from the Bach on, or before for that matter. And now the next paragraph in the Bach, it's a two-liner. V'chein gabei sukkah, shekatuv l'man yedu. Mashma legamkin shetzarich sheyichavein b'shat yeshivat sukkah hatam hamechuvan b'mitzvah. Which is l'man yedu d'rotechem ki basukot hoshavti et b'nei Yisrael. So you got to know what the sukkot are in order to fulfill the mitzvah. So therefore, the first siman in Tur Shulchan Aruch Hilchot Sukkah is Basukot Teshuv Shivat Yamim Ko Azrach Mitzvah Teshuv Sukkot Man Yidu. Excuse me, I'm just reading the passage. Basukot Sheomer HaKatuv Sheshivanu Bahem Heim Ananei Kavod Shekifanu Bahem Val Yakeh Otanu Shrav Vashemesh. Okay, that's the tour, and that's the Bach on the tour. Question: what does it mean? Shelo yikayem et ha-mitzvah kitikuna. What does it mean, kitikuna? So we're going to read the Pri Megadim, who is quoting the Levush. I'm sorry, I'm not quoting the Levush. I don't have a Levush at home. Maybe you have one in your Sifriya. You can look it up there. It's there. Dalet, Pri Megadim, Eshel Avraham, Orachayim Tafresh Kafhei. On that tour. Shelatzeit ha-mitzvah ketikuna, tzarich lekavein gam et zeh. To fulfill the mitzvah properly, you must have this kavana. Hadieved yatsa. Kol shekivein latzeit levad. Parentheses, ateret zahav, that's the levush. So the Pri Megadim is very explicit in quoting the Levush, saying, yes, you should have this kavana, and it would appear that having this kavana is part of the kiyum of the mitzvah min Torah. It's doraita. Nevertheless, if you don't, the eved yatsa kol shekivein latzed. You had intention to be yotze, you're yotze. You're not yotze as a result of not having that kavana. I will give you now 5 seconds to think for yourself whether you identify with what the Pri Megadim says or not. Okay. But he did say it. Now we're going to learn the Bikurei Yaakov on this point. The Bach, you should know, was a Talmud of the Ramah and the Marshal. He was when the Gdolei HaTalmidim of the Gdolei of the early Achronim of Chachmei Ashkenaz. and the levush. The Bikurei Yaakov is more widely known as the Aruch Laner, who wrote a perush on, we have him on 7 Mesechtos. On the 7 Mesechtos we have him. He is very widely learned. One of them is Sukkah. And in the back of his perush on Maseches Sukkah, he has a perush on Shulchan Aruch Hilchos Sukkah, which he calls the Bikurei Yaakov. His full name was Rabbi Yaakov Ettlinger, and he could have gone to Yeshivat Eretz HaTzvi, right? Because he, of all the Achronim, probably the only one, is known to have gone to college. Rabbi Yaakov Ettlinger, yes. So we're going to read the Bikurei Yaakov on this point, and it's the final source on this sheet. B'fri Megadim katav shekavanot elu einam rak lechadchila. It's interesting that he's quoting it from the Pri Megadim. I wonder if the Bikurei Yaakov also didn't have a levush. I'd find that strange, but it's not impossible. In any case, he's quoting it from the Pri Megadim. Avo b'di'eved yatsa b'shelo kivein rak latzeit. B'di'eved you're yotzei, even if the only kavana you had was to be yotzei the mitzvah. The mitzvot tzrichot kavana latzeit davka. Even to the extent that we hold, which many poskim do, mitzvot tzrichot kavana, it means kavana latzeit, as we explained earlier in the shir. He then goes on, and I cut to the chase over here. V'laniyut da'ati ein zu ra'aya. Dezeh dafka b'shar hamitzvot shelo tzivta haTorah kavana pratit bahem. I see there's a printing mistake here. Aval b'sukkah shehatzivui hakatuvhu sheyichavein kein mei, from the pasuk leman yedu dorotechem k'mo shekatav habach yesh lomar da filu bidi eved lo yatsa. The Torah says point blank leman yedu dorotechem. Who says that leman yedu dorotechem is only lechatchila, not bidi eved? It's ma'akev. V'lachein imachal balayla rishona basukkah below kavana zu yesh lahachmir le'echol shuv kezayit b'chavana. V'al kol panim yizaher kol achad l'lamed u'lesaper levanav l'vnei beito balayla harishona kavanat mitzvat sukkah. The Bikurei Yaakov, still in interpreting the Bach, says that, sorry, Pri Megadim can't accept it. B'di'eved, if you're not leman yedu dorotechem ki basukot shavti b'nei Yisrael, you are not yotzei the mitzvah. And therefore, make sure, in particular on the first night, when we eat the kazayit in the sukkah, like the kazayit of matzah, the leil HaSeder, that it's mamish a chiyuv. The chiyuv must include with it an understanding of what it's all about. Because without it, this is what the pasuk means. If you don't have that understanding, you don't perform the mitzvah of Sukkah. Now, you should know, so I shouldn't be hiding anything, that the Mishnah Brura is aware of this machloket between the Bikurei Yaakov and the Pri Megadim, And he says that most of the Achronim hold like the Pri Megadim. But the Bikurei Yaakov says what he said. And no one questions the fact that the idea that's being expressed here is certainly required minat Torah lechatchila. The question is whether you yotze bichlal without it or not. The Bikurei Yaakov says you're not. I taught with Rabbi Ebner in the yeshiva for 20 years together. I believe he had Talmidim that I didn't have, but every one of my Talmidim learned by him as well. I would be interested in hearing what he would have had to say about this machloket between the Bikurei Yaakov and the Pri Megadim, but I don't know. Thank you very much for listening and for learning with me this issue, which I think requires a great deal of thought. And even this last day of Sukkot is worthy of this thought.
Thank you, Rabbi Schrader. Since Baruch Hashem, the sound is working, despite the fact that the one person we cut out was the Rosh Yeshiva. But we'll make up for it somehow or other. I was told we'll have a private session. In any event, the last person, when the yeshiva was founded, I was not involved in the yeshiva. I was asked, Rabbi Susman approached me a few months before the yeshiva was founded on a Shabbat afternoon. I don't know if you recall, Mincha in Geffen Shul. But the people who founded the yeshiva, Rabbi Ebner, Rabbi Susman, and of course Rav Benny. Rabbi Susman and Rav Benny taught with Rabbi Ebner. I also was here from the beginning. Taught Rabbi Ebner for all these years. We asked to close out the evening for Rav Benny to give a few words.
To be the last one, it's always hard because you're taking the risk that thoughts that you have and you wrote are already being said by other people. But the Rosh HaYeshiva told me that I have to be the one that closing. So I will do the closing. And I want to start actually with a story that's not related to Rabbi Ebner somehow. That took place in my first year in Shlichut in Chicago 28 years ago. There was a fellow that was with us in Shlichut in Chicago when we established College Torah Mitzion in Chicago that came with us to Shlichut with basically zero English. He knew yes and no, but he said them in the wrong place most of the time. So literally like that. And in the end of that year, there was a girl in the academy where the college was located. She was in the end of 9th grade. And she came to me and asked me, where is so-and-so? And I said, he's not here at the moment. She said to me, I have a gift for him for the end of the year. Can you give it to him? So I take it and I give it to him. And he says, this girl asked me to give it to you. And he said, who is she? And I said, I don't know. She asked it. And there was a dedication in the front page. So I said, what it says over here. So I'm reading it and translating it for him with my broken English, but I understood it enough. And I said that she wrote, thank you for everything that you taught me. You taught me such a great deal. I'm a different person because of you. And he's looking at me and says, I think she did a mistake. I never spoke with her in my life. I don't know who she is. Please, I don't want to embarrass her. If you can go to her and tell her that, I don't know her. So I go back to her and I said, listen, he says that he never spoke with you and he doesn't know you. So he couldn't have teaching you anything. And she said, no, he taught me. It's true. He never spoke with me. He taught me a great deal. He says, I'm coming from a Reformed family. First day in Ida Crown, that is an Orthodox school. And I walked And I decided to myself, I'm too embarrassed to ask people what to do. So I will look into the men's section. I will find someone that look like he know what he's doing, and I will copy what he's doing. And right away, I saw how he's davening, and I realized that's the person that I want to learn from. And I was observing for a week, 2 weeks. I was observing what he was doing when he was doing Shema Yisrael. I heard the words, I understand what he did when he was standing for Shmonas, etc., etc. And after that, I felt more comfortable already to ask questions because I wasn't totally a bur that didn't know anything. Now, when I came to the yeshiva and we started the yeshiva, I knew how to daven. And then I met Rabbi Ebner, and I realized that I don't know how to daven. And, Dan Gross was mentioning it before, just to sit and look on Rabbi Ebner. I don't need to speak about his greatness in Torah. I don't need to speak about other aspects of his greatness, but just to look on him and to see how he davens, that impact me in such a way that I can say that I just looked, observed. I did spoke with him and learned with him a little bit about tefillah throughout the years, but most of what I got to my tefillah was just from looking on him and learning from looking on him. And I want to add just maybe a brief point that coming from a piece of Gemara that always strike me. A Gemara in Masechet Brachot in Daf Membet, in the bottom of Membet Amud Bet. And the Gemara telling us the story about the Chachamim that going with for the Levaya of Rav. And the Gemara says, Kinach nafshei de Rav, azlu talmidav batrei. So they went to the Levaya that took place in a different place, in a different town. And when they're coming back, they said to each other, Ki hadrei amrei nezol v'neicho lachma anahardan. Let's sit and eat in that and that place. And the discussion that they have after that, if the fact that they said we're going to sit, without that they said we're going to be massive, is that giving already considered to be as hasava, and therefore one can say the bracha for everyone, or that's not considered to be. And they're asking each other, and the Gemara says, Lo have beyadai. They didn't know the answer. And Kam HaVa'ad bar HaVa'ad, that was one of the Talmidim of Rav, and he did another kriya. He did another kriya because he said, Nach nafshei de Rav uvirkat mazon alo gamrina. Rav passed away, and even the halachot of Birkat HaMazon we don't know. Birkat HaMazon, we're saying every day. It's basic. All of us think that we know. Says HaVa'ad bar HaVa'ad, Rav is not here, and even that, supposed to be so simple, and we don't know. And I feel Rabbi Ebner is not here, and there's so many things that we don't know. I want to touch just literally a few aspects that other people maybe didn't experience. Rabbi Susman was mentioning how we recruit Rabbi Ebner. I didn't know Rabbi Ebner. Rabbi Susman told me, we have to get this rabbi. He's sitting at home and writing Chidushei Torah in poetry. So we met in his house, and I have a lot of friends working in other places, other institutions, other businesses. I don't know a lot of people that working closely as menahalim of institution for more than 20 years that never have an argument. It's not that we always agreed, but the kavod that Rabbi Ebner brought, with the credit to Rabbi Susman for me, as a student of Rabbi Susman as well, the kavod that was always in the discussion about big things in yeshiva, about how to behave when there is a discipline issue that we need to deal with a certain talmid or with a parent. That's something that I never dreamed that I will experience such a relationship with such a kavod. I was a kid when we opened the yeshiva. Noam Steinman told me that he's 33, right? I was 32 when we started the yeshiva, okay? and I jumped straight to the director, executive director, whatever, of the yeshiva. And I had Rabbi Ebner and Rabbi Susman holding my hand and helping me. And it was amazing to see two individuals that gaiva just doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. They always give kavod to others. They're always giving you the space. And other people that spoke about how they felt, the Calgary story, I actually heard it and I knew that he's from Calgary. But that's exactly the point. He find to each individual that he spoke with something to show A, that he care, and B, that he understand, where he's coming from. It's amazing. And I felt the same. What I'm missing the most, if HaVa'ad Bar Ahava spoke about that they don't know how to bench, I'm missing the most the advice from Rabbi Ebner. I had the privilege. Last year wasn't already in the yeshiva, but the year before, he already decided that he's not coming. And with little physical pressure, I succeeded to convince his wife, Rebbetzin Ebner, to put influence on him to agree to come in the mornings in the condition I promised him that I would pick him up every morning. And I had the zchut to pick him up 6:15 every morning and bring him here to the yeshiva. And that 15 minutes, by the way, except of days of rain, he didn't want me to pick him up from his home because he wanted to walk a little bit before. So I picked him up from Hadar Mall, whoever knows, in Talpiot. It's around 10-15 minutes walk from his home. And I will tell you why it's significant. It's not that the fact that he needed the walk for physical reason. That's true also. But Rabbi Ebner was learning while he was walking. And the reason that I'm telling you that is Ben Gross spoke about the fact that he sometimes came early to see Rabbi Ebner learning with other people. When the yeshiva wasn't here and Rabbi Ebner was coming by himself to the previous yeshiva, he was walking. So his first chavruta was 6:30 when davening was 7:30. But he was always there 6 o'clock because he told me once that he didn't say it in that way, but basically says, before I'm learning with someone, before I'm teaching, I have to learn by myself. And all day I'm busy in teaching, basically. So he made sure that he have his own learning before. And that's something that I adapted, Baruch Hashem. And trying to do before my chavruta before davening is that I will have my own chavruta also before starting my day. And I will just touch one last point. Some of the people over here will understand what I'm talking about. But I think that I grew up with a father, Zichrono Livracha, that passed away more than 30 years ago. Was a Baal Tefillah and a Baal Koreh, and all the nusach that I knew and I know, I learned from him. And my father passed away before we started the yeshiva. And when we started the yeshiva, and we started to get ready for Yamim Noraim, so we basically split the tefillot between Rabbi Ebner and myself, more or less. And the voice that I hear in my head today when I'm davening, when I'm not the Shliach Tzibur, is a mix of my father and my second father that gave me a lot of advice in life, and my kids. And I think that the Susman family kids feeling the same. That's the voice of the Yamim Noraim for all of us. Thank you.
What? If anyone happened to record it, the first 30 minutes, that would be helpful. I had the privilege of having many chavrutot with Rabbi Ebner over the years. The last one that I had was in Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman. I remember that Rabbi Ebner said that Rabbi Nachman used to teach complex Torahs And when he realized that people didn't understand complex Torah so well, he decided to teach stories. I think the one thing that we can walk away with a ton of Torah. I mean, I have years and years and years and years. We have tapes galore. If you haven't heard all those, some of those tapes I've heard literally 15, 20 times, maybe more. But we certainly have the stories. And I hope that tonight we got a chance to learn some deep Torah. I want to thank Rabbi Schrader, especially my Rebbe Schrader, for coming. I want to thank all the people who came. I want to thank all my colleagues in the yeshiva, all the students in the yeshiva, all the alumni in the yeshiva, and especially my dear friends from HaMiftar who also came. And we have those stories, and we can always take those stories for us for our lives. Thank you for coming.